welcome back. So last week I got to interview Anne and Matt from the Cool Story podcast. It's a Wheel of Time new reader podcast with one person who's reading the books for the first time and one person who's been reading them for decades. And they've just finished The Great Hunt, and I got to interview them right after they finished that. So, we had such a great conversation. We talked for more than an hour. This video was edited down quite a bit. If you want to see the full video, it is going to be available on my Patreon, so you can check that out. But yeah, we had a really good conversation. We got into things like, of course, predictions for things that would be happening in the future, suspicions about characters, and a really cool discussion about queer coding that opened my eyes about something that I had not thought of. So, without further ado, enjoy the interview. All right, so welcome to my channel.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you guys, to see you guys finally. I've been listening to you. Yeah, how did you guys meet?
How did we meet, Matt?
I moved here and I was just trying to find people within like the queer community to connect with, try to like find friends. I had recently come out and I just found that I was really looking for like community and friendships that were more authentic, where I could finally like be myself and not worry. And so I just met N trying to make friends in Santa Barbara area. Actually, when I met you, I had already seen you because I moved here right before Santa Barbara Pride, and our city does Pride like way later than everybody else because they do. And I went to Santa Barbara Pride when I first moved here, and I saw a drag show, and I saw this drag queen performing a song by Bjork, who is like one of my favorite artists of all time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in the right place. I moved to the right place. I'm literally at my first drag show in my new town, and there's someone doing a Bjork song. I'm obsessed with this person. And then when we met and you told me you did drag and you showed me a picture of yourself in drag, I was like, that was you.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
That was 2015, so we've known each other for 5 years now?
Yeah.
Introduce yourselves, please.
Oh.
That should have been first. Why don't we start, Kate? Matt, you just spoke, so Ed, tell us a bit about yourself.
I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, California, and I don't know what to say about myself anymore. Okay. I do drag, I have podcasts, I like draw and do art, I work at a university, I like to watch a lot of television.
Yeah, yes, I know this from listening to your podcast.
Okay, and there was a period of time where everything I talked about was Charmed, as
yes!
though it was the only TV show I had ever heard of.
I love that.
I don't know why every reference was Charmed.
Wheel of Time. How did you discover Wheel of Time?
Yeah, I can't remember my exact age. I want to say like 10, 11, 12-ish. And my brother is a really, really smart, a really big reader, and he's 4 years older than me. And so he was always kind of the person who introduced me to new media, just because he was older and like knew more about what was going on and things like that. And he tried to get me to read this series, and it was like the big old hardbacks, and I was a small 11-year-old. I was not a small 11-year-old, but proportional to the hardcover book. And I remember like not getting it and it being a little complex, and like hiding another like simpler book that I was reading inside of it so that my brother couldn't tell that I wasn't reading the book he was telling me to read.
Where's Waldo?
Exactly. Yes. But he was the one who got me hooked on it, got me introduced to it, and it's just been a huge part of my life ever since. I feel like I reread it every time a new book would come out. I would reread the whole thing, and so I've reread it so many times.
Except for The Great Hunt.
Except for The Great Hunt. And we just finished it, and it's now I really love it. It's one of my favorites now. I don't know why back then I was not feeling it, but it was one of the ones I consistently skipped. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of think I skipped the next book a little bit too, only because I think book number 4 is my favorite. And so I think when I would go like, let me reread, I'd be like, ooh, let me just skip to 4.
Right, okay, yeah. I see that. Okay, and then how did you guys decide to make a podcast about Wheel of Time together?
Do you remember?
I do, kind of. I'd never read the series. I'd heard of it, like, tertiarily, or whatever the word is I'm looking for. I've heard of it in the world, but I never really, like, even looked it up. And wanted to do a podcast, and we both had been talking about like, let's try to do a podcast on something we both really like, and we were like tossing around ideas. And N one time said, "Oh, have you ever heard of this book series, The Wheel of Time?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Oh, my brother and I like got into it when we were younger, and I'm obsessed. I've read it many times. I would love if you ever wanted to borrow it and read it." And I was like, "Yeah, let's sure." And I never really latched onto it. And then I think one day we were like really talking about, let's just do it. Let's just do something. Like, let's stop talking about doing it and let's do it. And then you came up with the idea like, hey, we've been talking about doing the Wheel of Time series before. We've been talking about doing a podcast. I would love to do it with you if you're interested in the series. If you're not interested in the series, it's okay. But if you are and you want to read it, I would love to do some kind of like thing with you with that. And I was like, yeah, I was like, perfect timing for me. I didn't have a lot of on my plate. And I bought the book and just said, like, if I like it, maybe we'll do it.
Yeah.
And you've never looked back.
I at very first, when I first read just the prologue and the first chapter, I was like, okay, there's a lot of names. There's a lot of complicated pronunciations. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. But yeah, I'm very happy that you came up with the idea because I love doing it. I love the series now.
Yeah.
Yay.
Your pronunciations are controversial, let me just say. Yes.
Are they?
I've heard.
Wait,
Yes.
both of ours or Matt specifically?
Okay, to be honed, yours. And
Ooh, okay.
yes,
Because you should know better.
Yeah, that's right. Like when Matt pronounces something wrong, I'm like, well, he doesn't know. But yes, like, okay.
What do I say wrong?
Well, I don't know if I want to say wrong because they're fictional names. They're not real people who are like going to be all upset that you pronounce their names wrong. But like, okay, the Great Hunt. So the guy whose palace that Padden Fane went into.
Agomar.
No.
No.
In the Great Hunt.
Barthanes.
Yeah. No. Barthanes.
Oh.
Except
That sounds
You know what?
better. That sounds way better.
There's also a character who is like Matt's right-hand person who
yeah.
I call Talmanes,
Yep.
which I'm pretty sure is not correct either.
Well, okay, I've heard it Talmanis. Now, I think the reason you are pronouncing it the way you are is because you've just read the names, because you don't listen to the audiobooks.
No, I don't.
Yeah, and I didn't listen to the audiobooks for a long time, so I know, for example, that for the longest time, Nynaeve was like Nynaeve or something. I can't even remember it anymore until I was listening to the audiobooks and was like, oh, Nynaeve, that sounds better. That sounds so much better than what was happening in my head.
She was, for years and years, she was Nynaeve to me.
Yeah, I can't even remember what it was. Like, but it was like a 3-syllable name, I think, for me.
Yeah.
It was just like, yeah, that sounds vaguely
Barthanes.
Irish. Yeah.
Are there other things that I'm
True.
doing wrong? Or, like,
Okay.
controversially?
Yes, I was going to say, I don't want to say wrong, because again, fictional people, fictional names. Whatever, not really. Well, there was one where you actually looked it up, and you disagreed with the glossary, which was,
Ooh.
yeah, Egianin.
Oh.
You did not
okay.
like how that is. You said it, I forget
Aegeanin.
how you
Aegeanin.
Yeah, Aegeanin, that's
Aegeanin,
right.
you said.
Aegeanin. You're like,
I like
will
that better,
die.
too.
I will die on this hill of Aegeanin.
I think Aegeanin is way better than Aegeanin. Is that what it is?
Egianin is how I say it.
Aegeanin?
Egianin.
They're both fine. They're both good.
That's exhausting. Just saying. I'm exhausted saying that word.
It's a lot. Whatever. There's a question I've been wanting to ask you ever since I discovered your podcast.
Yeah.
Your theme song. How did you get a theme song? It gets stuck in my head. Like I'm
Oh, good.
just so you know, I'm gonna edit it in here.
It's cool story, cool story. The Wheel of Time, the ultimate fantasy. It's cool story, cool story.
So that people can hear it.
Oh, cool.
Because literally, I'll listen to an episode, and then for a couple of days after, I'll be like, "Cool story." What's happening in my head?
We
Version.
hired somebody to create it on Fiverr,
Okay.
which is, and I don't know if you know
Yeah, I
about
know
Fiverr.
Yeah.
One of my favorite places. I feel like it's so handy.
Yeah.
But his name was Custom Drum Loops.
Okay, custom drum loops. All right.
Yeah.
Like
On
it
Fiverr.
totally gets stuck in my head. Like it
I know.
literally. It's like it rhymes and everything. Like it's like I never thought about wheel.
It
of
really,
Time.
it really is a jingle.
It
like
is a
it's
jingle.
one of those things that kind of gets stuck in your head.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I like it. I wasn't
Yeah.
sold on it when we first got it. I was like, I hope this is it. I just want it to be perfect. I want it all to fit. Does it sound like fantasy series enough? Is it too? But as soon as we like released our first full episode, I was like, oh, okay, I like all this together.
Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. So, okay, let's get into the meat. Matt.
Okay.
Matt, okay.
Yes.
I have a question for you specifically about Tom. You were uber suspicious of Tom.
I still am.
I was about to ask you, are you still suspicious of Tom?
I am. So I have not read ahead at all,
Okay.
even though I'm really dying to read the third book. It's sitting on my table and I look at it like, but I just felt like Tom, I'm very suspicious when I read books because I don't like spoilers, specifically like because I love the process of figuring things out and seeing if I was correct. You know, I love that.
Yeah.
So whenever I meet a new character, I'm always like a little bit suspicious. So Tom, he just does, he's not forthcoming with his information. He's
Okay.
too guarded. And so I instantly felt like he was not to be trusted because the way he was interacting with Moraine when we first meet Moraine and Lan in Emmons Field, he just was like, "Oh yeah, not me. I'm just a simple gleeman. I'm barely even a gleeman. I don't even know." And
then
before that,
he does the Michigan J
yeah,
frog.
but I was like, you just were talking about like you're this big gleeman and everyone's so excited to see you. And now when we didn't know she was an Aes Sedai at the time, but now when someone mysterious and important seeming sees you, you're like, oh, who am I? And I still don't totally trust him, but I don't think he's like a bad guy anymore.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Is there anyone else in our party that you are suspicious of, or?
I am not necessarily suspicious of, but I have worries about, of the main Emmons Field like 5. The only person I'm really worried about is Nynaeve, because of all of the illusions with an A, not an I, that she would be a something different. Like I don't remember who said it, if it was Moraine or Min, but someone had a conversation about the 5 of them in the first book, and it was like, oh no, Nynaeve, you're with them, but you're like separate. There's a separate journey for you, someone said. And so I've always been like worried that means that she's headed down a path that puts her somehow in opposition with the people, the main the other 4. So that's my worry about them. And I'm not worried about like anything with Matt, because I could tell there's going to be a lot that goes on with him because of, I stay away from spoilers, but every image I see of him depicted has like a lot of symbolism that means nothing to me yet. So it's like, okay, you obviously are going to be something important in the future. There's a lot of dice around him and crows and things like that. So I don't know what any of that means, but I'm sure it means nothing great. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not suspicious of anybody else currently besides, well, Celine.
Celine. Okay. So how, because in listening to the podcast, you had suspicions. What were your suspicions of her? Like, what were your theories reading through?
Oh my gosh, how many did I have? And I had like,
like
5
15.
or 6.
Okay, so
my main thing from the start was she's not to be trusted. She's a bad guy because she just seemed to. I thought that she had caused the whole Grolem thing. I don't think she was afraid of the Grolems. I don't think she was being attacked by the Grolems. My initial theory was that she was Lanfear and that someone had trapped her in this alternate reality of some sort.
Right.
And she couldn't get back on her own because she couldn't channel and use the portal stone.
Okay.
And then she was using Rand to sort of free her. That was my theory. But then as they traveled, I was like, maybe she's an Aes Sedai because she seems to be doing all the Aes Sedai stuff, like wanting Rand to follow a certain path and kind of persuading him to do things and being so interested in the Horn. So then I was just kind of going back and forth, like, is she an Aes Sedai? Is she Lanfear? And then I had a third theory, was that when I met the Damani, I was like, oh, maybe she's a different kind of magic user somehow. Maybe she's from, they're not all, where are they all from?
Shanshan?
So they're from a place called Shanshan also.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I read, but I was like, maybe I'm wrong. So maybe she's from Shanshan and she's like an escaped Damani or someone who was like undercover, but Here we go. It turned out
Now
to be.
you know.
I will stand by that. My original theory was that she was Lanfear.
Okay. My favorite character. I won't even tell you what my favorite character is. Who is yours so far?
Me?
Yeah. So far.
It's hard to say favorite. I would go between Moiraine and Nynaeve. I go between Moiraine and Nynaeve, yeah.
Okay. And then N, who are your favorite characters?
Nynaeve and Egwene are my just all-time diehard favorite characters.
Yeah.
I think I said before on the podcast that on some of my rereads, I would just skip all of the chapters that weren't about Egwene and Nynaeve and just read the whole series as though it was only about them.
I mean, it kind of is, right?
I mean, to me, a lot of the time.
Okay. All right. So we're all on the same page, kind of. Nynaeve is
Yeah.
my girl. Like, she is.
And it's so
love her.
weird to me to see when people are like complaining about her on Reddit and things like that, because all of her motivations are entirely selfless. Like, she's actually one of the most virtuous characters in the book series to me. And so that's why she's like my favorite of all time.
Yeah. I love her. I love her temper. Even
yes.
her, like, they're all human characters, right? So they're all
Yes.
flawed. Like, she's not a
Yes.
perfect
Right.
person, but I love her flaws. Like,
She's
yeah,
very relatable.
very
Very
relatable.
relatable.
Yes.
Yes.
Very, very relatable. Oh wow, we're all.
She's very type A.
Yes.
yes. Like,
She's very much the person who's used to leading the group project because nobody else is pulling
nobody
their
else
weight.
does
And
the
that's,
work.
and that's why she's so relatable.
Exactly.
Absolutely. We're all queer people reading
Yes.
these books. So I know that reading how Nynaeve reacted to finding out that she could channel resonated with me in probably a way it doesn't resonate with straight people, of just being like, wait, no, don't tell me this truth about myself. That is,
Yeah.
I actually, I think, and you probably know more about this terminology than I do, because it seems to be your area of expertise, just listening to you talk about issues and whatnot.
Maybe.
But like talking about things like queer coding,
Oh, yeah.
and that sort of thing. Like that's something that I found is just, oh yeah, that jumped off the page at me. Are there any other things like that jump out at you guys?
I mean, I think for me, when I was reading these books initially, I was like desperately trying not to be queer. So yes, that Nynaeve moment for sure resonated with me as a young adult or youth or child, whatever I was. But I think somebody on Twitter the other day said the most like brilliant thing about how queer people are so used to never seeing themselves reflected in media that we look for those little moments of subtext that are like, oh yes, this is an experience that I feel like is unique to my kind of experience as well. I think for me, Egwene was very much that kind of character to me as well. Like, there was definitely an element of I know that I'm destined for something outside of this kind of I was about to start doing Beauty and the Beast lyrics, but something more than this provincial life. You know, like there's something about her going on a very intentional journey of self-discovery that I don't think a lot of the other characters often it feels very sort of forced upon them. And Egwene, to me, yes, there's obviously elements of that as well, but she's very much motivated in discovering who she is as a person. And so to me, that's another character that I like really kind of resonated with as far as like sort of seeing some queerness in this media that didn't really have a whole lot of it.
Yeah. Okay, so
I agree.
Yeah, you're only 2 books in, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I saw it with Perrin more for me. Like, I saw the queerness with Perrin. And I mean, I love Perrin,
I was about
obviously.
to say, you're crushing on Perrin pretty
I'm
hard.
big crushing on Perrin. It's partially because the actor who's playing Perrin in the show I think is beautiful. But also, just the way he's described and like some of the illustrations, like that's totally like my male character that I gravitate to is more like, I never identify as much with like a male protagonist that is at all different than me, like, because I just don't find a lot of male protagonists that I feel like are similar to me. Perrin is like the type, like he's quieter. He's sort of off to the side. He's unassuming, but he's got more power than he
Thoughtful.
knows.
Right.
Yeah. And I think Perrin's struggling with the whole wolf brother thing, and I ultimately don't know exactly what he's going to be called or become or what that even truly means, but just his like journey of acceptance of this so far has been very relatable to me. I mean, I mentioned earlier I didn't come out. I'm 35. I
Okay.
just turned 35, I think.
You're looking good.
I didn't come. Oh, thank you. I didn't come out till I was 29, and so I struggled for a very long time, and coming to acceptance with that, and I could talk about that for hours. But seeing Perrin, like, find out he knew he was different in some way, and then he finds out, oh, I think I met somebody who I feel like this might be something. And then he meets Elias, or is that how people say it? I say Elias, but are people saying Elias?
No, Elias.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was another one that my whole life I've said wrong.
Oh, really?
I just
I thought it was Elias when
Ah.
I was a kid.
Yeah.
I've known a few Elis, so it's unfair for you. I've known a few Elis.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like Perrin's journey of like figuring out, like resisting it and not wanting it to be true for whatever reason. And I read it and I'm thinking like, this is so cool. You are going to have this like whole new aspect to yourself,
Yeah.
possibly an ability that you can control, a whole new like section of society that you're going to communicate with that nobody else can.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
I thought, great, like why would this be a scary thing for you? And then I just thought to myself, like, how did I feel when I knew I was gay, I knew I was queer, and I started to have to, for whatever circumstances came in my life, I felt like I was going to have to start confronting it, and how scary that was, despite what a beautiful thing it is to be queer and to be
Yeah.
part of this community. It still was like so terrifying to me. And now where we're at now, I feel like Perrin is just, he's not verbally saying he accepts it, but like he's using his wolf brother abilities. He's
His
speaking
wolf
to the
GPS.
wolves. Yes.
Full GPS.
Yeah, and when the wolves talk back to him, he's not like, "Oh my god, I don't know anymore. Oh my god, I'm not a wolf brother," and he's not doing the whole Rand, "I'm just a shepherd" thing. So
Yeah.
that's where I feel like I connect with like sort of like the queer, like element and the identity, sort of search.
That's so interesting. I had never really read Perrin that way, so and I don't think we've talked about that on our podcast. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting to me too. I might be because I'm a woman, right? So the Nynaeve moment jumped out at me. But now that you're talking about this to the parent, I'm like, yeah, that's so obvious.
Yeah,
It's so obvious.
it's really obvious to me. I was like,
Well-
wow, I'm feeling really dumb right now.
Yeah.
I think identity plays like a big part in all of these characters' like storylines and trajectories so far. So I feel like it's only natural that we would find struggles that we've had with our own identity and find that in characters that we are like reading about, because I think in some way they're all struggling to accept their identity in differing ways. Like Egwene seems more willing to accept that she's something different. She's more willing to see what being an Aes Sedai is all about, and I think that probably has something to do with her life has always been dreamed of as very small for herself.
Yeah.
You know, from what I'm reading, her future was marrying Rand and that's it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Like being
you know,
a
whatever.
wisdom, maybe something.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe, you
Yeah.
know? So it's like, I think for her, this is like a bigger life than she's seen for herself. So she's more willing to accept that she might be different than she accepts herself. Whereas Nynaeve, someone who's always been so sure of herself, it's harder for her to accept that she's wrong about that there's something different,
Yeah.
that she might have to like change her whole way of life. She seems to have like a path. She likes that.
Yeah.
And now it's like not that way. And that's like, what the hell? And so I feel like they're all in some way, and obviously Matt and Rand, you know, that's pretty simple to see their identity struggles so far, because it's like one's dying and one is, you know, going to be the dragon. So
Yeah.
I just think it's one of those things like where, you know, you're able to sort of, or if you're not able to see yourself, like actually see yourself, you have to look for all these little moments that validate your existence. And I've really appreciated in doing the podcast, like it's causing my brain to revisit this world in a really different way than when I had originally sort of read through it kind of ongoing. And it's kind of led me to see a lot more opportunities for creating like headcanon for myself of
Yeah,
queerness
yeah.
in this series.
Yeah.
Just as like an intentional, like, no, I will be in this series in some way.
Yes. Absolutely.
how Robert Jordan's writing it so far, I feel like if the language existed that exists today in a more accessible way, and if the mainstream media was, I say, as accepting as they are today, not to say that we're all the way there, but you know, we're actually able to talk about this and record it and put it out and people will watch it. So that's saying something. I think if it existed back then as it exists today, I am confident that Robert Jordan would have included more obvious representation of more marginalized communities, because the way he's writing it is so sensitive to everything, from like the things we've talked about, identity, and then like mental illness and addiction and all these other really like big topics that I'm at least seeing in the book. So I feel like there's no way we wouldn't have supposed to see more queer characters in the story.
There was something Rafe Judkins, is he the director or the producer?
He's
director?
the showrunner.
Showrunner?
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but that's his title.
He tweeted something, and it was a while ago, but somehow it like just showed up on my thread, where he was like, "Oh, I just got my first death threat. Now I will do the only thing acceptable, which will turn that person's favorite character gay."
Yeah.
So I'm just like, yes.
That's genius.
I am so happy that he is the showrunner. And obviously we are all queer people. Like, I'm very happy that a queer person is doing it, but he's a fan. Like, he's a big time fan, and so
Oh, is he?
Yeah. He's been reading the books for
fan.
a while. Like,
that's awesome.
So it's not just some random guy who's gotten this. Like, this is a passion project of his. So
yes, and I'm just grateful. Like, unlike Game of Thrones, or Song of Fire and Ice, that it's over.
Yeah.
So like, we know where the story's going. If the TV producers have to like kind of crank through it and make some decisions. So. You know, and it sounds like they're kind of collapsing some storylines to make it simpler and all of that, which I'm for. I think that'll actually make it great.
I like when shows take creative license to interpret the
it's
book
an adaptation
or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yes, I was listening to and I know we talked about this podcast on our show, but the Brene Brown podcast, Unlocking Us. She has an episode where she interviews Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon about the Hulu series Little Fires Everywhere. Yes. And she also does a separate interview with the author of the book. And I forget her name right now. I'm so sorry. I'm really bad with author names. It's not because it's not great. I'm just dumb with that.
I'll edit it in now.
But she interviews her and she asks her, like, what did you think about the adaptation, the Hulu adaptation of your book? And she said, I thought it was great. And the way she compares like adaptations is she says, like, when you hear your favorite song and you hear someone cover the song, you don't want to hear the exact same song covered by another person. You want to hear what they're going to do to interpret the song, because it's an interpretation of their work. So she's like, when I see, like, including my own work, when I see it, I want to see someone else's interpretation. And, you know, written text can't be translated into a show in the same way, because, for instance, they use the example in Little Fires Everywhere that so much of it is inner dialogue and so much of it is like inside. So you can't take that into a show without having characters speak it out somehow. And sometimes it's not easy to do that.
So, okay, Matt, in the first two books, what is your favorite, like, what are the part of the story so far has had the biggest impact on you?
That is a good question. So the biggest impact for me, and this could be colored by because it's more recent than what I've read previously, obviously, but when Egwene is collared, I cry. I literally cried out loud. I was gonna say I cried in real tears out of my eyeballs, onto my cheeks, off of my face. This is how tears work.
Yes, I was like, thank you for describing the process of crying.
I'm very good at crying. It's a great core workout. I love it. I would say, just the Egwene collaring thing. I was so affected by it. I was. The way it was written, and it all happened so fast, and I really didn't see it coming. Like, not in that way, at least. I thought that there would be danger of them being in Shan-Chan at some point, or being around Damani, and maybe I didn't think it was going to happen that way. I didn't think it was going to happen that fast, and just them all seeing it happen and so helpless, and then just her experience afterwards. I was just so heartbroken.
I definitely, when I remember reading that part for the first time and having to like go back and be like, wait, what's happening right now? Because like it hadn't like clicked. I mean, obviously I knew Leandrin was an awful person, but
Right.
like I didn't see this level of betrayal coming. And so when it happened, I was almost like, I don't understand what's going on here. And I had to like go back and I was like, oh, I get it. We're
Yeah.
being betrayed right now. Cool, cool, cool.
Matt, you said you're a slow reader.
Mhm.
How is it go? Like, cause now I you got to the end of The Great Hunt and you broke the rules. Like you finished
I
it
did.
because you couldn't stop reading. How? But like generally, you have this enforced speed on you where you have to read a couple chapters, stop, read a couple chapters, stop. How is that for you?
It's going well for me because I think the reason I'm a slow reader, or why I perceive myself as a slow reader at least, is because growing up, I really liked reading and I liked books and escapism and all of that. But I, somewhere along the way, early on, I more latched onto like other things like drawing and like artwork and stuff like that. And I kind of got out of reading and I found it for whatever reason impossible to get back into reading because my guess is that all of the reading that was put in front of me was like school reading, and I hated anything my teachers wanted me to read.
Right.
But yeah, so I think it's hard for me to consume content at like a rapid pace and really feel like I'm absorbing it. So I find like in TV shows, I have to focus or I have to rewind every few seconds. If I lose focus, I'm like, wait, I need to rewind because I just missed something. Wait, what did that person just say? I wasn't paying attention enough. Maybe look back. So for me to really take it in, I feel like I need to read a little bit and like
Digest.
take a pause at certain parts and be like, okay, what does that mean? Maybe I have to go back and see something else. So it just takes me a while, I guess. This format works way better for me because it's short amounts of chapters at a time.
I love hearing all of Matt's theories and guesses. Like, it's just so fun to see this world that I've like been in for like 20 some odd years suddenly be like reinterpreted and be like, I wonder if I wondered that, or what things did I think, you know? I wish I had a journal of all the things I thought when I read it.
So how is it for you, Ed, reading through it again, like at this pace and in this much detail? Like I don't know that I've ever read the books in like that and taking notes like that before. So
it's really great for me. I don't mind the pace of it too much. There are moments where I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to get to this moment from like book 7. And then I realize it'll be like 4 years before we get there if we continue at this pace. And so like, there's moments like that where I get like kind of frustrated because I just like want to read ahead and go through it again. But it like you said, it's so interesting to like take notes on it and talk to somebody about it for the first time, because it like forces me to think about things in like ways that I can sort of safely explain them. And even just, I feel like in this most recent reread with Matt, like saw more detail about like why the Shanshan are the way that they are because of the way Artur Hawkwing was. And it's just like seeing those moments in like greater detail, like it feels like just kind of adding like finer and finer details to this painting that I've been like looking at for 20 years. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
that was going to be my next question. You kind of touched on it, but I wanted to know if there's anything else that you've pulled out new in this reread.
Well, now apparently I know Perrin is queer, so there's that, which is just gonna rock my world for the rest of these books.
Somewhat negative question. Is there anything about so far, Matt, that you're not enjoying? Like anything that has stood out and been like, I don't like that so much?
When I read through how detailed and how much sense everything makes and like A leads to B and how thought out certain things are, like for instance the Adam, and like, okay, he thought of this tool of oppression that's going to be used, and he figured out like this is the way it's going to be used, basic, right? Leash, collar, ownership. Then he's like, okay, but this is a world where channeling exists. Right. So how could someone who's channeling wear it and not get out of it? So he figures that out. But what about this? And then it's just all so well thought out. So when things happen like by happenstance or circumstance, I'm like, that just doesn't work for me. So Nynaeve, I still don't buy Nynaeve just learning how to practice getting that Adam off of Gwen's neck. That scene, I'm happy it happened. I'm so happy it happened. It just doesn't resonate for me. Like, I understand. I didn't understand the time passing, and that sort of helped me understand a little more. Like she had a lot of time to practice. I don't like that we get so much detail about like traveling on horses and going to different towns, but then this big thing of her studying and practicing how to open an Adam, we don't get any context, but then she just is able to do it.
Okay.
And we just happen to be there. Like, I get it. She's probably tried many times and you explained that, but why don't we get any of that? But we get so much of like, and they were riding a horse, and then they stopped to gentle the horses, or like still like make them better again. And then we're in a town, and they're looking at this rooftop, and here's the tinkers, and here's the illuminators. And I loved the illuminators chapters, but looking back in retrospect, they didn't really need to be that long or there at all, unless maybe there's something coming. But nothing about this 4 months of practicing how to get an Adam, the scariest for me tool of oppression or weapon yet. That I don't like. So if that's not explained at some sort of detail later, like that doesn't work for me.
I think though that like much like in Harry Potter, where you don't really see the mechanics of them like learning magic, because I feel like part of what makes it fun and interesting is it is magic. And so I think if we had like 5 chapters of like Nynaeve grinding it how to channel an Adam open, it wouldn't be very interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like in a heist movie where you know they have a plan, but they don't tell you all the details of the plan, because then you're just basically watching them do the steps that you just watched them practice 1,000 times, and it's not interesting.
That makes sense.
I think
That makes
that's what
total
it is,
sense.
yeah.
That's a really good analogy for that chapter.
I like that, but I still feel like at large I agree with that, but I think it would have been interesting to see a chapter or two where she tried to get
That's
to an
true.
Adam and unsuccessfully did it, or she tried to maybe just a chapter explaining like what happened that led to them having to hide for weeks.
Several
Like
days,
Rather
yeah.
than getting
even
it in
if we didn't
retrospect.
see them hiding, we don't need to see any of that, but like she tried to do it, it didn't work, and then this is how they kind of like sequestered themselves off, because that's also kind of unbelievable that these 2 women who are Aes Sedai are channeling she's channeling even just a little bit, but there's Shanshan and Damani and Saldam everywhere around them that everyone is afraid of and everyone's hiding from. And these 2, I'm not saying novice in the terms of the book, but like in terms of like language, 2 novices at this are able to like hide by wearing clothes that they wear.
I get it. And it is true. Usually, even like in a heist movie, you do get a montage, of
that's
them
true.
trying.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's get a
And typically-
montage. Play like
trying.
Celine Dion in the background, or like put on Hilary Duff, coming clean, and have this whole moment.
I don't want to keep you. It's been more than an hour. I surprised Zoom let us stay on for this long. I guess because it's Christmas. I heard they were extending things for.
Oh, how nice of
that's
them.
nice.
Yeah, it's really sweet. Yeah, It's major corporation being somewhat kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I don't want to keep you too much longer. So, is there anything like you guys have another podcast, which I do listen to? I'm a couple of epissodes behind. You just want to plug that a bit?
Yeah, our other podcast is called Ripped from the Headlines. It's a podcast where we recap an episode of Law and Order all the way back from the 90s and talk about the true crimes that inspired the episode. And if you enjoy our kind of irreverent humor and dated references, I think you'll enjoy listening to that as well. It's very much thematically like Cool Story.
Yes, very much so. I really do enjoy it. I'm just maybe 2 or 3 episodes behind on that one.
Thank you. That's so
Oh,
nice.
thank
I
you for
really
listening
appreciate
to
that.
it. I was
Yeah.
wondering what the cross section would be. I mean, I know we both love both of these worlds, but I didn't know if there are a lot of other people that have the same sort of like cross section between like true crime and like pop culture and like fantasy books and
I think everybody's
things
watched
like that.
Law and Order now. I think it's just
Right?
like
At
it's
some
just-
point, yeah.
It's just there.
Yeah.
Like when I listen to it, it does make me want to go back and watch the episodes. But then I think, but
Mm-hmm.
no, it's from the 90s.
Yeah.
I just
We'll do it for you.
Thank
We do
you.
it for you,
we're-
and you could just enjoy the hot takes.
We're literally jumping on that grenade for everyone because you do not need to go back and watch it.
yes, I appreciate that. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Entertaining, but not necessary.
Yes. Well, this has been super fun for me.
Yeah,
I hope we can do
same.
it again. Like
Totally.
maybe when you
I'd love
finish-
to.
Yeah, the Dragon Reborn, maybe. Or
Ooh, yeah, that'd be fun.
yeah. Like,
So that was the interview. It was a really great interview, and as I said, we talked for more than an hour. So the full interview will be available on my Patreon. Links in the description below, and yeah, I've also linked to, of course, to the Cool Story podcast as well in the description below. And I guess that's it. As always, like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!